he tell us that one of the high commissioners had contacted him and said, we have a list of names of people that are on the danger list, and yours is right on top.
Did you feel that there was a chance, there was a point where this investigation would come to some sort of conclusion?
So after the new government came in, we were all very hopeful that not only Lasantha's case but all the other people who were waiting for answers for their loved ones, that we would see all that happen.
Was there a point where you sat down with him one day and told him, look, maybe things are going out of hand, maybe you need to take a step back, keeping family in mind?
So after those incidents, yes, definitely I cautioned him. But Lasantha was somebody who didn't see the dangers. He knew the dangers were there, but he didn't worry too much about it.
You went on stage quite often and used Lasantha as a tool during their campaigns. But did they actually speak to you about it?
She went and met Raine Wickrematunge because she knew that he was a close friend of the father. So she was hoping that now finally justice would happen, and she went and met him. The objective of writing the book was to gift Lasantha's remarkable story to the world.
Hello and welcome to another episode of On Fire here on Daily Mirror. I'm Lasantha. The murder of journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge continues to send shockwaves not just here in Sri Lanka, but the world over. Now, the issue has drawn attention once again, of course, as a result of this book written by his ex-wife Raine Wickrematunge. Unbowed and unafraid looks into Lasantha's life, of course, and has certain incidents reported as well. So let's go into the book and speak a little about Lasantha with Raine herself. Raine, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Iswaran. Good to be here.
So Raine, firstly, why did you decide on writing this book?
Actually, the first time that I put pen to paper was 10 years ago. I needed a time I couldn't go through look back on the life with Lasantha because it was too painful at the start. But after, I think my daughter mentioned that I should start writing, so I started writing and then found that it was quite a therapeutic process and helped in the healing with looking back and writing about how we met and our life together, the children, and then starting the Sunday lead and all that. Yes, so it helped in that. But of course, the objective of writing the book was to gift Lasantha's remarkable story to the world, as it were, or at least to Sri Lanka, and hope that it would inspire people and especially new generations of journalists.
I know I'm reading parts of the book. You mentioned that you wanted to write a book initially as well, or earlier. But then you felt that it was not the right time at that moment. Where did the inspiration come for? I mean, was it the fact that there was a lot being said about Lasantha's murder, or was it just getting his story out?
Actually, it was just getting his story out to the people, because I realized that this was a really remarkable story of a very inspiring man, and I thought that other people should be able to share in his story. So that's what was driving
But
force.
the additional parts that have been put in this edition is, of course, extracts. What your daughter is saying, right? Ahimsa's thoughts on the whole incident as well. Looking back, do you feel that justice could have been served earlier? Did you feel that there was a chance, there was a point where this investigation would come to some sort of conclusion?
Yeah, there definitely was a time when we thought that we were going to get answers finally. That was during 2015. So after the new government came in, we were all very hopeful that not only Lasantha's case but all the other people who were waiting for answers for their loved ones, that we would see all that happen. But unfortunately, things turned completely went in a different way. And to the point where the lead investigator in the case was transferred suddenly. So I think with the ill winds blowing in the political scene and the leaders bickering, that had an effect on the cases as well, because we saw investigators being transferred. Of course, after the big hue and cry, the transfer was cancelled. But then there was interference in the case and nothing happened thereafter.
So, I mean, we are seeing the same faces in the political arena. Those people who once said that they will ensure justice are still in power. Same members of parliament, same former cabinet ministers. Do you think that justice will ever be served?
Well, we can always hope that it will be served, but about the question of when, we cannot be sure. We just live in hope.
What was Lasantha like? I mean, if we can just go back a bit about, his entry into journalism, what drove him to become a journalist and become so passionate about what he was doing?
I think when Lasantha first joined the Sun newspaper, I was already there. I had to train him in sub-editing because he was put into the sub-desk, but he was a real joker. He was always, till his dying day, he was a prankster and a joker. So he would tease me and all that, and I would get annoyed at work. But when he first joined, I don't think he knew that he had this great talent as a journalist, and especially as a investigative journalist. So after a year or so, he was transferred to the news desk, which was a good thing for him because that's where he found his real passion. And we saw all his abilities very well there. And then there was a problem at the office, and the management told him that he was going to be sent on 1 week's leave. And then he just said, no, I'm leaving, and he went, and next day he was writing for the Island newspaper. And that's where we saw that, because he was getting, every day he was breaking a big story, and that was the lead. That's when we knew that he was turning to be one of the best newsmen.
Did he ever discuss with you the need to, expose some of these politicians? Do you feel that, that was his role, that he needs to ensure corruption is highlighted, that say various incidents which are often swept under the carpet are exposed in the media? Definitely,
because I think even though some he didn't have that fear of exposing anybody, whoever it was, as I have said in the book, whatever office they may hold, he went ahead and named and shamed the devil, whoever it was, whether it was the president of the country. So he didn't have that fear, and I think because he had the law background as well, he knew how to, keep it within the perimeters of libel and all that. What drove him later was, yes, he loved Sri Lanka and he loved the people. He had a heart that melted for the people. So he felt that the people had a right to know what their leaders were doing, how their tax money was being spent, and if there was a scandal, if there was corruption taking place, yes, he saw to it, he felt that he had to expose it.
Was there a point where you sat down with him one day and told him, look, maybe things are going out of hand, maybe you need to take a step back, keeping family in mind?
Yes, we had that discussion many times, especially after the 2 attacks. Because the first attack happened 1 year after the leader started publication. In 1995, we were waylaid and he was pulled out of the vehicle and assaulted. The second time, we had machine gun fire at our directorate house when our youngest was only 2 months old. So after those incidents, yes, definitely I cautioned him. But Lasantha was somebody who didn't see the dangers. He knew the dangers were there, but he didn't worry too much about it.
So he knew that it would probably come to...
Definitely he knew, yes.
But he was still willing to continue
taking the risks. In fact, he had told his brother that when Kilinochchi is retaken is when I'm going to be killed. So he knew that.
Was there any indication before the incident happened in 2009 that there was a planned move to assassinate him? Did he mention anything to you?
Yeah, he did tell us that one of the high commissioners had contacted him and said, we have a list of names of people that are on the danger list, and yours is right on top. Why don't you go overseas for a while? And then the children heard about it, and they were at him saying, please, now come to Australia. But no, he didn't see the need for that.
I mean, I know this might be hard, but when you heard that this incident happened, what went into your mind at that point? Do you feel that this was something that could have been avoided?
Yeah, but at that time you're in shock, so you don't reflect back. You're just going with the flow, like a zombie. Yeah, so I didn't think at that point. Yeah.
Lasantha, I mean, like you said, was very passionate about what he was doing. The need to expose and so on. We find it hard to, see or find those kind of journalists around these days. What can journalists learn from someone like Lasantha? I mean, a lot of people are scared now to, take the sort of risks that Lasantha did. We see a lot of quote-unquote telephone journalism, people very rarely going out and digging deep and actually getting the story. What can journalists of today, especially the upcoming journalists, learn from someone like Lasantha?
I think that fearlessness has to come from within. I don't think you can teach somebody to be fearless, but they can take inspiration from his story, and they can learn from him that you can make a difference. A journalist can make a difference in the country for the people, and that they should forge ahead, maybe not to the extent that Lasantha did and put his life really when he knew that he was under threat, but to forge ahead and live up to the ideals that you espouse. So yeah, I think that's what they can learn.
Also, what did you feel, what went into your mind when you saw during the Aragalaya, a lot of people coming out there and holding placards and saying, okay, using the words that former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa used, who is Lasantha? Lasantha is around us. Those are the words that the people were using. What went in your mind at that point?
Yeah, it was very heartening, not only for me, for the children as well. And in fact, our youngest son, Adesh, who was only 10 when Lasantha was killed, he hadn't had much engagement with the whole story of his father until the Aragalaya. So during that time when he saw all this happening, it made him realize, oh, so my father had made a mark in this country. He was a trailblazer, and so this is his legacy. So that made him read up and become very close to the father again through what Lasantha had written and what he had done and how people were viewing him after all these years. So that was really good. Not only seeing Lasantha, but all the other journalists who were killed or abducted, they were all highlighted during the Aragalaya. So that was good.
Did you think that Aragalaya would probably, open a new path for these investigations to recommence and, for justice to be meted for Lasantha and even Sivaram and the others who were killed?
Yeah, that's what we all hoped for. And in fact, I thought that the Aragalaya was the way to go for change, because change wasn't happening. I mean, we had lived for so long, successive governments, but there has never been change. People have talked about abolishing the executive presidency, people have talked about rooting out corruption, but nothing ever happened. So I thought that the Aragalaya was achieving quite a bit until they were stopped, because the government seems to view the Aragalaya youngsters as rebel rousers, troublemakers, but I don't see that at all, because I feel that they went into it with a passion for the country, that they had the best interests of the country at heart, unlike most of the other politicians we see today, it's more self-serving. So I wish that the leaders would actually look at them in that, from that point of view, and they made some proposals as well. So look at those proposals and see whether they can take on board some of these things that were suggested, rather than treat them like some ruffians and lock them up or something. No, we have to learn from these young people.
Did at any point did these leaders, these politicians who at various points when they were campaigning, did they reach out to you and say, look, we will ensure that this incident is investigated, that we will ensure that the perpetrators are brought to book? Because they went on stage quite often and used Lasantha as a tool during their campaigns. But did they actually speak to you about it?
Soon after he died, yes, several politicians went on record saying that they were definitely going to do something. And even when the Yahapalan government came in, I remember Rajit Srinath at press conference, he mentioned that this was going to be a priority. But I didn't talk to anybody, but I know Ahimsa came to Sri Lanka and she went and met Raine Wickrematunge, because she knew that he was a close friend of the father. So she was hoping that now finally justice would happen, and she went and met him.
Yeah, and she mentions, I don't want to go too much into the book, but she mentions that at that initial meeting itself, she had doubts that anything would happen. Since you mentioned Ahimsa, is it a worry that Ahimsa is now very openly speaking about the investigations, demanding justice? Is it a worry that, your daughter is also now, drawing a lot of spotlight, coming out and speaking very openly about this?
Definitely, it was a worry, especially when during the US case against Gotabaya, I was really worried. And I was telling her we don't want another tragedy in the family. But fortunately or unfortunately, she seems to have inherited Lasantha's fearlessness. She was not worried. So then finally, when I realized this is going too far and this has to change, I spoke to the lawyers and I said Ahimsa is putting herself in a very dangerous situation and I'm not happy with it. So Ahimsa was furious when she heard that I had spoken to the lawyers. And she said, no, I'm going, even if I die, that's okay. I'm going to see that, I'm going to fight till the last day for my father. So yes, nothing happened.
Speaking to some of these politicians, of course, on some of my programs as well, they keep saying, when we come to power, we will ensure that this is going to happen, that the investigations will go forward. But do you really feel that that would happen? I know you said earlier that, you can live in hope, but as long as this lot of politicians are around, do you feel that can happen?
No, definitely not. No, it's not going to happen during this government anyway. Hopefully in the future, you never know, there might be somebody who comes into power and gives the police all the support to conduct all the investigations, not only for Lasantha but everybody else.
You yourself are a journalist. I mean, do you ever think of, maybe continuing from where Lasantha left?
No, unfortunately, I don't have those investigative skills. I was more a feature writer and a sub-editor. I didn't have the that type of skills. No.
Okay. What was I know it might be a bit too early, but has there been any reaction to this biography, especially from the powers that be?
No, nothing. Haven't heard anything. I think it might be a bit too soon, but I don't know.
And what happens next? Now this is the second edition, right?
Yes.
But what happens next as far as seeking justice for Lasantha is concerned? What have you been discussing with Ahimsa, or do you have some other plans of your own?
Yeah, I don't know whether Ahimsa has any plans, but at the moment she's a bit tight-lipped about it. She's not speaking, so I don't know whether there is anything in the offing.
Okay. Lasantha, of course, was not just someone who stood for his own organization, but he also stood for several others as well, for the private media especially. Sometimes people ask, are the media actually standing for their fellow journalists as well? Do you think that there is enough attention being drawn to this incident by the local media? Should they be taking more of an initiative to push for these investigations to move forward?
Yeah, there was a lull for a while. There was not much being spoken about all the journalists who went through all this harassment and all these abductions, murder. But of course, I must say that the YouTube journalists have been speaking out quite a bit. They are quite fearless, and we are seeing the repercussions of that. Yeah, the media can do more, but I understand that they also have constraints.
What is your feeling about the way the country is moving now? The economic crisis is one thing, but Lasantha also stood for human rights, and that is something that a lot of people are talking about even now. Do you feel that there is a chance of change in the future, or you think that this is just going to drag on over again?
Well, as far as the economy, I know you said not the economy, but as far as the economic crisis is concerned, yes. So we have got this IMF handout, and with all these IMF-driven austerity measures, and which is piling more and more burdens on the poor people. But of course, IMF says that their programs are aimed at long-term stability, and Raine Wickrematunge, Prime President, has said that in the next 4 years things should get better. But what I can't understand is, as long as this system is in place, we need much more far-reaching reforms in every aspect of the country. Okay, even if the economy gets back on keel, it's going to keep happening again as long as this scourge of corruption, all this is rooted out. I don't see any long-term change happening because this will happen over and over and over again.
Do you see, I mean, a lot of journalists have fled the country. Do you see them, returning anytime soon?
It will be nice to have people coming back, but at the moment I see people are just packing up and running. So it will be good if that can happen, but I can't afford to talk because I'm living overseas as well.
Would Lasantha have wanted the Sunday leader to continue even after his death?
Definitely, yes, he would have wanted that.
But is there a concern that the Sunday leader at times took various other directions and didn't really follow the sort of, examples that he set for the paper?
Definitely. He would have, if he was watching from somewhere, he wouldn't have been happy with some other things that happened. He would have wanted the journalists that trained under him to continue unbowed and unafraid, which was his motto.
Is there a possibility of, some of these former Sunday leader journalists maybe coming together and, continuing his legacy when it came to journalism?
I don't know about coming together and doing it, but I can see that a lot of journalists who worked with Lasantha, who loved him, who learned the craft from him, traveled the road with him, that they are doing great work now themselves and carrying on his legacy. So that's very heartening.
Right, we'll have to leave it at that because we run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure. And of course, the book is out, so you can grab a copy from, where can you get the copy?
Yes, so the books are available at Vijitayappa outlets, at Expographic and Barefoot at the moment.
Right, so with that, we'll leave it for this week. Thank you for joining us this week for On Fire. Till next time, stay safe.